I'm going to bring you to the beach, why don't you read your magazine? Quit drinking your beer. Look at that. Would you quit looking at all these girls with no clothes on? Drink your beer. Ain't I enough for you to look at?
And the primary objective again of the overall program, just 3 little words. Pack it right. Okay, gentlemen, are there any questions before we wrap it all up? Bill?
Perfectly clear, J.B. The AR-715 is a joint regulation for the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, and the Defense Logistics Agency. It covers the packaging policy in depth, and it also has...
Okay. George, you got it?
Well, yeah, J.B., I got the general idea. At least the pack it right part. But I wonder if you couldn't use a bit plainer language. I mean...
Okay, George. I'll try. You remember that chocolate cake Aunt Esther sent you at summer camp?
Yeah.
Well, if an article's not packed with enough care and the right kind of materials, it'll be just as useless as the cake you got, George. Too much packaging, of course, when it really isn't needed, is just as bad. It's expensive and troublesome, so the big idea is to pack it right. Just the way it should be, to keep the item safe, whatever it is.
Well, it makes sense, J.B.
Of course. AR-715 spells out the whole thing in terms you should know. Do you know what a unit pack is, George?
Sure. It's the first time anything like a single item is wrapped.
Right. To make a complete or identifiable package. Very good, George. Now, when you take 2 or more unit packs of identical items and you wrap them together, you've got an intermediate pack. Simple? Next comes the exterior pack. And this is merely a unit pack or a combination of unit or intermediate packs properly wrapped to protect the contents during shipment and storage. Now, when we talk about commercial packaging, we simply mean the things the supplier does and the materials he uses to meet the requirements of the commercial distribution system. Military packaging, on the other hand, is what the military says must be done to get the kind of packaging protection needed to prevent damage and deterioration during worldwide distribution material. Okay? Now, when we take several packs of 1 or more items and put them into a single load, we've got unitization. That single load can be handled as a unit in the distribution system. And that single load, whether it's in a container, on a pallet, or load base, or securely bound together, is unitization. Containerization, of course, is no more than the use of a standardized piece of transport equipment that lets railroads or ships or trucks, even aircraft, easily carry the goods without any fuss or bother in between. Naturally, anything that's to be shipped has to be marked to get where it's going, and marking involves whatever numbers, letters, labels, tags, symbols, or colors are needed to identify the shipment. Now, those are all important terms, George, and people in the business ought to know them. But the 3 most important are still coming up. They're what you might call the 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps, J.B.? 3?
Yes, George, 3. Packaging, which includes preservation and packing. The whole idea in a nutshell. Packaging covers all things that are done to protect material from damage or deterioration. Cleaning, drying, preserving, packing, marking, even unitization. Preservation is a matter of taking the right protective measures. That means cleaning, drying, using preservative materials, or cushioning, or containers if need be. Packing, on the other hand, refers to the assembly of items into a unit pack, intermediate pack, or an exterior pack. But with all the blocking or bracing or cushioning or weatherproofing that's needed. And, of course, the necessary reinforcement and marking.
Of course, JB, we're talking about a wide variety of materials, different sizes and shapes, fragile items as well as sturdy ones, and varying degrees of complexity. A small item like, well, for example, a transistor is a far cry from a tank or whatnot. And likewise, any delicate instruments require a lot more care than, say, an item which needs no more than a shipping tag, really.
You know, JB, if they knew all this stuff in the old days, they might have saved Venus's arms.
Venus to Milo. They might have, George. You know something? There's nothing halfway about this regulation we're talking about. It has policies and guidelines that pay off. Believe me. Yes, sir. It provides a definite policy to give every item the degree of protection it requires. In addition, it develops the packaging requirements that meet any anticipated shipping needs. By the same token, it's the overall policy to make shipments less costly and far easier to handle by keeping weight and cube requirements to a minimum. And when necessary, to specify how much of a given item will go into any given load. Likewise, we've got to have certain standards for everyone to follow. We have to review and revise our packaging needs when our requirements change. Use unitized loads when possible to save money. And never overpack an item that'll be used right away or put into a good storage place. To turn out more goods and cut down costs, we've got to use automated packaging equipment as much as possible. What's more, advanced packaging techniques like shrink film are great. So, the more we can use them, the better all the way around. Of course, it's also policy as well as common sense to use standard-sized modular units with pallets to match whenever possible and practical. Naturally, nobody with any smarts ever compromises with safety. That's standard policy, too, and every meathead ought to know it, especially around flammables, ammunition, explosives, and other hazardous materials. But it's all in AR 715. Now, I can't be expected to spoon-feed anybody the whole 9 yards.
Well, JB, if it's really a matter of packing it right, and it is, then what this whole business boils down to is selecting and using the proper degree of protection for the item in question, right?
Yeah, 100% right. So, we've got levels of protection for the military, George. Level A is the maximum protection against the most severe conditions that we can expect during shipment, handling, or storage. Extreme stuff, see? There's no protection other than that provided by the pack. That's why it's gotta be packed right. The first time, with no ifs, ands, or buts. It must be packed right to hold up under multiple handling during transportation and in-transit storage from the point of origin to the final user. It must withstand shock, vibration, and static loading during shipment. It's got to take all kinds of weather exposure during shipment or where storage facilities leave much to be desired. And it must face the hazards involved in ship deck loading, transfer at sea, air shipment, whatever's needed to get it to the final user. Level A protection also means protecting an item during its life cycle in all climatic zones. The coldest, the hottest, you name it. Proper stacking, of course, is essential during any kind of storage because of the static loads that are imposed. Loads that must be considered by the proper packaging requirements of Level A. Okay, this is Level A. Protection for the roughest, toughest military situation imaginable. And Level B, that's protection for known favorable conditions only. Now, I got the picture, George? Level A, maximum protection. Level B protection, enough to get the job done.
Commercial packaging, of course, is something else again. Right, JB?
Not really. Commercial packaging is used whenever logistic conditions justify it, or it may be used to satisfy level requirements if the design of the package meets all of the conditions of the level of protection that's specified.
In other words, JB, it still has to be packed right, or there's going to be a lot of static.
You see, bulk-type practices such as interplant or intraplant are generally all right in their place. But you can't go this route on shipments to the final user. No way. Commercial packaging must protect items against physical and environmental damage during shipment, handling, and storage. Industry standards where appropriate must be followed. Adequate protection is the name of the game. Anything else, anything short of this, is a no-no. But the smart operators know all of this. The other contractors had better read up if they want to stay in the business. And that's about the size of it.
Okay, we got a north shipment on this thing today. Got to leave here.
Obviously, the item itself has a bearing on the degree of protection required. So, design elements must be considered. Technical and performance specs must be related to possible hazards. Then, depending on transportation, storage, and handling conditions, a level of protection has to be determined, but not higher than needed. That's costly. There's also the business of the right documents, knowing where the item is going, how it's going, how soon it'll be used, all kinds of considerations.
All right, let's get our heads together, iron the problems out, get it crated up, dunnage out, ready to ship this afternoon.
And that's why inventory managers, for example, have to develop and use realistic experience data to help determine the proper degree of protection. It's why they have to develop and establish, by machine or manually, the features for identifying any conditions where a certain degree is required. It's why they have to outline the preservation, packing, unitization, and marking requirements in their procurement documents. And of course, use the highest degree of protection when conditions warrant more than one category or degree of protection. So there's quite a few steps and procedures involved, and it all adds up to handle with care. When it comes to marking shipments, there is, as always, a right way to do things and a wrong way, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, man, there's plenty of chicks up there. Foxy ones, all the time. All the time. Think nothing of it.
Proper marking is strictly a matter of going by the book. Follow the applicable federal and military standards so there's no problems. No doubt the item will get where it's going. Radioactive, hazardous, and shelf life items, of course, must always get detailed markings. So, no matter how you look at it, the right way really is the best way.
You think you can straighten up?
Naturally, under certain conditions, there are options as to the methods, materials, and procedures used for certain degrees of protection, but in the main, the final choice must give the most protection at the lowest cost. And that makes sense for my money. Anybody's money. Of course, to keep things on target, a lot of coordination is needed. Just getting the packaging information for repair parts, for instance, it's a big job. Maintenance, packaging, handling, storage, transportation, supply, procurement. All kinds of data must be collected and coordinated. And it's much the same story when establishing pack quantities, too. All kinds of details must be nailed down. Every known factor must be considered. Then, and only then, can the pack quantities be firmly established. It's no job for amateurs, that's for sure. Of course, Murphy's Law about things going wrong always seems to prove itself. Consider retrograde repairable items. Much of it is still serviceable, so it makes sense to give it enough protection so it won't get any worse. The old ounce of prevention idea, you know. Material that's really beat up, like the cake at summer camp, should also be protected so it doesn't get any worse. Sure, it might appear irreparable at first glance, but there's always the hope of salvaging something.
JB, you sure got all the answers.
Well, George, I've been around the block a few times. I do my homework. If more guys did, well, as I was saying, if more guys knew the score, you wouldn't see so many stupid things like not wearing a protective mask around dangerous vapors. And when it comes to health and safety, doing things wrong is really foolish. The best program in the world won't help some people. Pollution, of course, is a big part of the story, too. And just as the ecology boys will tell you, this regulation says that pollution of the environment due to packaging operations must be controlled and kept to a minimum so as to meet the standards prescribed by federal, state, and local authorities. Obviously, there'll be some problems. Certain deficiencies will occur and discrepancies will take place. So that means it's DD Form 6 time. And DD Form 6, the Packaging Improvement Report, must be used to report all such discrepancies according to prescribed criteria. Okay, that's about it. All the key points on packaging. But since even I make a mistake now and then, don't take my word on things. Check out AR 715 for yourselves. Got that, George? Check that regulation, okay? And remember, the whole idea behind good packaging policy and procedure is to pack it right.
I could 10 for that.
You heard the man. Pack it right.